This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Is it audible? Yeah, so good. Yeah, so before discussing about this today's concepts, let's recollect it what we discussed yesterday. Then we'll continue this today's one of the important concept that is Ansible. But what we had it yesterday, so if we try to understand, try to recollect it, we were discussing this one of the concept that is vagrant file. In the vagrant file, what are the different the properties that we have us to launch the virtual machine? So those properties we were understanding that. But the properties which are defined in the Ruby language, and what is the main object that is have this in this the vagrant file is the configure object. So vagrant.configure, and we can specify the version either 1 or 2 on the basis of the current vagrant which we are using. And then the config object has been created, and that config object we were setting this the properties. But one of the important properties that we are observing is one of those is the port forwarding option. Like within that, the guest OS, what are the services which are running? Those guest OS services we can publish to the host OS itself. That means like where we were launching about the CentOS system, and within the CentOS, suppose if you launch the HTTP service or SH service, all those services we can publish directly to the host OS, that is the Windows itself. That means Windows host IP address with that publish port, we can use it to access that guest OS service. Yeah, that is one option we were trying to understand. That is port forwarding concepts. And another point or another property which are observing from the vagrant file, how do we define this the network, like private networks with the static IP address or the public network with the DHCP concepts? So how do we set up this that VM.network, the private underscore network, and we can define that the specific IP addresses. So that is network setting, and we can define. Yeah, just a minute. So is it audible to everyone? To the guest OS was one of the option we were understanding the synchronize folder. We can define about our host OS folder and the mapping with that the guest OS folder. And another important activity we are understanding is provisioning. Like after launching about the virtual machine, what are the scripts that is required to execute it, or what are the shell commands that is required to execute it? Those commands or the scripts we can define as the provision concept. But we have the different types of the provisions options which we can define, that is Ansible or Puppet or shell script. And we were observing about it shell, but shell which is on the two types, that is inline or script based, And inline we were defining, that means the commands, what are the commands that is required to execute it after initializing this, after booting up the system. So that is like inline commands we were defining. Or if you have the script also we can define the complete path of the file, the shell script where it is located. Or if you have the Ansible, the provision type as Ansible, and Ansible script where it is located, the script location we can define it. Yeah, that is a provision which is helping about it, like once the virtual machine is launched, what are the packages that is required to install it, or what are the services, or the users, or the permission setting about it to that workspaces. So there's everything to launch this the particular platform, that is a Java platforms or the PHP platforms or .NET platforms. So there's a platform related. There's a complete the packages and services we can define this through the provisioning concept. Yeah, there are all the options we are observing, but is using the first single file. That means a single virtual machine to launch it in the vagrant file. But the same vagrant file, we can use it to launch it to the multiple virtual machines also. But what is the property that is helping is config.vm.define. So we can define with one more object, that is there's a virtual machine object, and to that object we can set up that all the properties which are required about the synchronized folders or the port forwarding or the network or the provisioning or the memories, instead of doing the global level object that is a config. So using the config we can define the multiple virtual machines, and we can define that's virtual machine specific properties. And while launching this, how do you launch it, or how to start it, or how do we stop it, is the vagrant up, and whatever the machine you have defined, that's machine name, we can use it while launching. That means starting or halting or destroying or statuses we can check it. So there are all the points that's where understanding that the virtual machines, how to manage it by using the vagrant in the development environment, having the identical environments. That means the production, whatever the infrastructure which you're expecting, the same infrastructure we can set up this on the Windows itself for the developers in the development environment. Yeah, so that's the beauty of this, the vagrant. Vagrant is just like not only just launching the virtual machines, that is helping about it all these features to have it the same, I mean on the Windows itself, same the production environments we can set up that. Yeah, so that's the point we understood yesterday about the background. And the next point what do we have is like now, I mean, as in the CI/CD process, like if you try to recollect of the Jenkins, we were defining this the continuous integration until to the staging environment. Until to the staging in sense, like we were I mean apart from the build activities and creating the artifact and artifact deploying to app server, but we had deployed only one app server, that is a Tomcat server. And we were after deploying, and we were doing the integration test cases. That means until to the stage only we have defined, but production we have defined some dummy commands to check it that the process from the Jenkins. But in the production environment, once the staging environment is done, how do we deploy that application to the production environment? That means where we will be having this multiple servers, not only just one single server. Single server, yes, we can use it, the plugin deploy to container, and which container is required to deploy to that container, we can define it. But if you would like to target the same application where I'm running the Tomcat servers on the 20 machines, or where I'm having the Tomcat server maybe 10 systems or 2 systems or the 10 or 20, or we don't know that's how many that is required to deploy that application to the servers. But how do we distribute, as I mean distribute in the sense, how do we deliver that application to the production environment once the staging environment is done? So that is the next concept we have. This is like how do we manage the infrastructure for the distribution point of view, the deployment point of view, or the configuration point of view is. So some tools are helping us in the DevOps. So whatever those tools and which tool is recommended, let's have this point, that is configuration management tools. We are going to understand it, and one of the important tool we are going to understand is that is the Ansible. Yes. Yeah, so before talking about the Ansible, so if you just understand, if you try to recollect about our continuous delivery or deployment integration, yes, we have done integration point of view, those development activities or those activities we have done. Now we are coming back to that. How do we manage the infrastructures? So there's that means if you have the change, that could be application or infrastructure change, how do you manage it with the continuous delivery or deployment approaches? How do you define it? That is, we are going to understand it. And the main point what we have to say, suppose if you're working in a company and about our customers, if they got this one future change or some change, and that change, how fastly you deliver to the end users of about our customers. Suppose if you take this example, if you're working for this in the organization for the Citibank client purpose, Citibank project you are supporting, and the Citibank team, they have got about the some feature instance, some like a functionality from their application or some change in the infrastructure. Suppose let's assume that the Tomcat which has this like 8 version, and that is required to replace 8 with 9. But the change which they thought it, that could be application related or infrastructure related, how fastly you deliver that to the production, I mean users in the sense production environment. So user is accessing this application is nothing but the application is on the live environment. Live environment is production environment. That means one change, how fastly if you are able to deliver to this the production environment or to the end users. So that life cycle of the time, that delivery of that change to the production environment, if you reduce the time, then the customer will get this more benefit. Okay, so the main point what you have is cycle time is the most relevant metric in the software delivery process. And how long would it take about your organization to deploy a change that involves just one single line of the code? Suppose if the customer is saying this one functionality, but that functionality, simple functionality, that is one line of the code is required to add it. So he's expecting some button and button action. But this to add it about it, suppose if you ask that, suppose the TCS team is saying that, boss, if you give us one line of the code where we take it 1 week of the time to deliver that change to the production environment, because we need to test it, unit test cases, integration test cases, the production test, I mean that is load test cases, the functionality test cases, or like UAT test cases, and finally production deployment and production test cases. I need at least 1 week of the time. If the TCS team is saying like that, but same quotation, the Infosys is saying that if you give the change, I will deliver this in the next 3-4 hours. So then are we, I mean there's a lot of difference. The TCS which is saying that the 1 week of the time to deliver that same change to the production environment, whereas Infosys has quoted that only there is a 3-4 hours. The lot of I mean obviously there's the customers are attracted, so with that the Infosys quotations which they have that. But Infosys team, how they are able to provide it? Yes, they have automated everything, and with that, the complete continuous integration, continuous delivery, everything they have defined that the life cycle to reduce the delivery process, the cycle times. Yeah, that much is important in the delivery process. So the cycle times, minimizing the cycle times is important, and if you minimize that life cycle times, then this customer I mean so he will get that this is when you create value. So even customer is getting the benefit is nothing but obviously about our organization also will get the benefit, and our organization is getting the benefit is nothing but obviously we get the benefit. Yeah, so this is that's minimize that the delivery process life cycle time. The finally conclusion is I mean reducing this life cycle time or minimizing that. It's about getting about features into your users hands as quickly as possible. But how to manage it that? So that's the next point we are coming to that. Agile first manifesto, what do you have as first principle? Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. I mean, if you just take the change and if it apply to the production, that is also I can do the within 1 hour. But the quality is also very important. So Infosys team, they are saying this within the 4 hours they deliver it, but they should not skip the complete life cycle, that is staging environment and verifying there, or UAT verifying there, and all this. It has to be verified all the stages, and finally quality of the product delivering that and within the less time to the customer is very, very important. So there's a continuous delivery of valuable software. Yeah, this we are seeing this continuous delivery and deployment pipelines, and which is at the heart of the delivery process. Yeah, if you try to understand this pipeline is in essence an automated implementation of about your applications build, deploy, test, and release process. Yeah, already we know it, but just we are we are finally coming to that, like how do we apply the change to the production environment with all these process. Yeah, there is like a final concept of the delivery or deployment we are trying to understand. But the main point what we have this is already we know it, but this is the diagram point of view. The developers once commit the code to this version controlling tool, and the build server, like the Jenkins, the like I mean the slave machines. So the slave machines pull the latest change which is available and check out the code and run that's all the build artifacts generation and unit test cases. Once those test cases and code coverage everything is good, then deploy those to accept test environment and run that accepted test environment related test cases, then deploy to the performance test environment and run that functionality test cases which we have, and deploy the UAT environment and run that test cases over there. If all are passed, then finally deploy to the production and check it all the production test cases. Yeah, this is a continuous process, but in this process one change, how do we deploy this to those multiple targets? Multiple targets in the sense, like in the acceptance testing, like maybe 2 servers they have set up that, and maybe performance test environment maybe they have set up this like some 10 servers, like where they would like to test it the complete performance load testing environments. And UAT maybe they have set up the 4 servers where we need to deploy it and we need to test it all the 4 servers about the test cases. And a production environment maybe they have set up the 20 systems for high availability load balancing and all these points, and we need to deploy that change or application change to the 20 servers. So different target groups in the delivery process. So accept test environment as separate group, performance test environment is 4 servers, accept test user accept test environment maybe there is 2 servers, and the production environment maybe 20 servers. Then how do we logically group it all these the different environment systems where it is required to apply the change? Yeah, that is the next point which we are going to learn it from this Ansible point of view. Yeah, so if I'm able to automate it, logically grouping all my accept test environment, all the systems as one group, that means whenever I need to deploy my application or my change to the accept test environment, simply I will access those 2 servers which have been set up this accept test environment. I will deploy those 2 servers. And once this is done, and then like another logical group which are the performance test environment where we have the 10 servers for the performance test environment. But same change which is accepted here, I need to deploy this to my performance test environment, all the 10 servers, and I need to run the test cases which have been given by the testing team as per this environment. And once that is done, so UAT servers IP address, that's everything different. But logically, I need to manage it that's as a separate group. So how do we do that? So there is but thinking about that change is not just like as a war file, or you are going to deploy the I mean some war file or the jar file. Maybe some like one project member is resigned and he is leaving the company. That means whatever the user account that has been created for that user in all the systems, we need to remove it. That is also change. Or another user joined to the project and he is I mean expecting that's one user account where he can access about all the systems, but we have this the 2 plus 10 plus 4 plus 20, that's approximately 30 to 34 systems we have that. But how do you create that user account in all the systems? Or you need to change that Java version 1.7 to 1.8 in all these systems. These are all also change. But how do you manage it all these, I mean all these systems to manage it? Yes, we need to have automated deployments. So user change, yes, user how to change it or how do we delete it? Yes, user delete is the command. But when we are not going to log into the 30 systems or 34 systems, log in that and use a deletion command in executing that. No, that is not recommended. If you do that, automate even user creation or packages installation or services starting stopping, or like some kind of the file scoping or configuration files management, or the tools management, that is database tools or the Tomcat tools or the web server tools, or like reporting server tools or the monitoring server tools or the proxy server tools. So for one application, what are the resources that is required? All the resources we need to identify and we need to go for deployments. But what is the advantage of automating all these configurations with automated deployments? And why do we need to go for? Yes, automated deployments are helping about it. Create application runtime environments on demand. Yes. Suppose if you just think about it like a testing environment, yeah, so which you are saying does like a especially there is a integration test cases, integration test environment which have set up this two servers that is not required to have the 24/7 up and running. If I am going to start my integration test cases, before that integration test cases deployment and everything, I need to have the systems available to. And there's a 3 hours or the 4 hours or the 5 hours, whatever the time that has been spent for this integration test cases. And after that time, and if I don't need those systems, maybe I need to shut down it. Suppose tomorrow I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do this integration test cases today because there is not 7 availability. Midnights, nobody will touch about that integration test cases. Only 9 to 6 that is required testing team availability, that is to run that functionality test cases or to have those integration test cases. But production environment is different. Production environment 24/7. That is, we cannot apply that. This whatever we are talking that. Or developers, let's just think about it. Developer, he is using one system. Total 10 developers are available, 10 systems. But those 10 systems, they are going to use it morning 9 to 6 or something 7 or 8 only during that particular time. The remaining times, that system which you are assigning or which you are up and running, that is consuming that the power or the net and all the things. And once the before developer is leaving that, so just simply he can destroy all the systems which he is using. And once he comes back to the 9 o'clock, then he has to start his workspace starting is nothing but the system launching wherever he is doing the deployment and launching about the system and working on that. So far in our infrastructures we have the on-premises is the standard system or like specific systems we have, and they are allocating and we are using. Okay, whenever we are leaving we are shutting down, and whenever we come back we are starting that. But the next everything is cloud. If you are using, if you are using the system as per the usage, you are going to pay the amount. If my developers, I am going to take it the 10 systems from the cloud, morning 9 o'clock whenever the developer is there, start it, and whenever he leaves that the workspace, just shut down that. That means from the cloud, whatever the systems we are taking, all the systems we need to release it back. But before that, he has to manage that all the code committing to the repositories. What are the repositories that we have are taking to that his local laptop. And once it is done, so whenever he is coming back tomorrow morning 9 o'clock, then he has to take that the instance from the cloud and he has to work it. And before leaving again, he has to release that instance. If you do that, then those 10 systems every day, only that's 9 to 10 hours we are going to pay that the amount, and the remaining times we are not going to use those systems. So thinking about it, create application runtime environments on demand. So if I need that to run my integration test cases, I need to have this on my Tomcat server up and running. So whenever I'm triggering about it, my build process for the integration test cases, before that, call it about start the system and start the Tomcat server and make it availability and with the database. Then apply those test cases on that server, and once those test cases are done, then remove that instance which are taken from the cloud. Yeah, so on demand environments we can set up that. We have this the cloud providing that's the cloud formation tools, and we have the some those tools are available. Like you, and suppose if I'm launching the EC2, yes, I can start my Vagrant up. Yes, instance will be launched. And once my integration test case are done, Vagrant halt. Yes, this machine will be shut down. For that, Vagrant up and wait some time and run the test cases. But Vagrant up you are doing is nothing but the provisioning scripts and everything that is going to run it, and it is going to launch the Apache server just we have seen, or like that. There's a Tomcat server scripts, or a database server scripts. So which you need to launch it, and after launching about it, and once that is done, and Vagrant halt. Yeah, that is a, there's a on demand, the environments also setting up that, but it is not applicable for UAT and the production where we are expecting the 24/7. That is entirely different. But the development environments or some testing environments, as per this, the usage which we can create that environment temporarily and usage, and once usage is done, release that the environment. Yeah, that's kind of the expectation. That's why how this from the infrastructure teams now. Yes, we have those approaches. We'll come back to that. So how the cloud is supporting in all those cases, and auto scaling groups we have. So this which will come back to that in the cloud to learn it all those bunch. And yeah, so that is on demand environments to set up, and a fast, reliable, repeatable, and predictable outcomes. Yes, so that is if you do that automation, so it is going to help for fast deliveries, or the reliable and repetitive activities which we can automate it, and predictable outcomes, and consistent environments in staging and production, and establish fast feedback loops. If you do this, automate everything, then apply the change and see this what's going to happen that. So you can get this the feedback, and you can see this, or you can react upon that, and make release days riskless. Yes, once if you do that, automate everything, then riskless the releases, and almost boring. That means once if you automate it, everything automation scripts are going to take care, then we'll get the bore, definitely almost boring. Yeah, so why do we need to go for? So that is our approach. But what we need to do that automation? So what we need to do this is the systems, the drivers, the packages, and the services, and the securities, or users. So everything that comes under that as automation process, on the middleware servers, or the database servers, are the applications which are going to deploy, and application related dependencies, and the data, some integration test cases. Like to run it, we need to insert some mock testing data, or some dummy data, or some production data. We need to take it, and we need to define in the UAT environments as some testing cases to check it for us. So that's the applications or the dependencies and data. So, and as well as configurations to manage it about all the things. So there are all the things that's expecting about that, the automations. But how do you do that? So how do you do this is, yes, infrastructure also as a code. That means if I need the development environment to establish also as a code. Yes, we are going to talk at the Terraform. The Terraform is helping about it to launch from the load balancer to the proxies to the app servers, or app servers to the database. Everything you can launch it within the 2 minutes or 3 minutes of the time. That's on the base of the resources which are defining, it is going to take the time. That means within the 5 to 10 minutes you can set up this about your infrastructures. And keep everything in version control. That means if I'm able to automate it everything, this automation is nothing but scripts, and the scripts we can manage in our version controlling. So as we were trying to understand that the Vagrant file, yes, that is also one of the script which is helping virtual machine to launch it. And another point which we have is that is Jenkins file which we had it. That is also like as automation script. You can just keep this in version control tool. So just pull it and run the script. And as we were trying to understand this anyway, GitHub, like the source code repository, and the Maven build activities, that is the pm.xml file, that is also you are maintaining this in the version controlling tool. Some data. So all the things that we should be able to manage this in the version controlling tool. Yeah, align development and operations. And align development and operation whenever we talk about monitoring things also, which we need to take care about it. Yeah, we'll come back. So we have this one demonstration on that. So how do we set up that the infrastructure, and onwards we'll see that with AWS approaches. This will come back. But let's start about that. Ansible, how it is going to helpful in this the process, especially to automate about your OSS or the middleware servers or the database servers, yes, and the application or application data, the dependencies. How do we manage it? But infrastructure as a code, we'll come back. We have the Terraform scripts or the cloud formation stacks. So that is going to helpful. So how to manage the infrastructure? So we'll come back to this later about it. Yeah, so Ansible wise, if you just understand that Ansible is an configuration automation tool. So in short, an IT auto Yeah. Is it audible now? Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, so if you just observe this, the trend, how do we have this in the current market usage of these like configuration management tools? Like we have the total three tools like Chef, Puppet, and Ansible. And Ansible from 2013 onwards, it is having the very, very, very good demand, and it is increasing day by day. And it is marked as a number one the server in the market as like so one of the best configuration management tool. And the Chef was old one, and still only some environments they are expecting of it, but we are going to look at about it one of the important configuration management tool, because this is supporting for the cloud infrastructure, easy way to connect it and to manage it. So easy way to manage it about our containers based environments like the Docker or the Kubernetes environments. How do you provision that the containers? So this is one of the flexible and the very easy to manage it about this any kind of the infrastructure that is on premises infrastructure, or is it a cloud infrastructure, or is it a container based infrastructure. So this is the very flexible. So why it is flexible and what are the features we have in the next slide, we are coming back to that to understand that the difference between the Chef, Puppet, and Ansible. This is a trend, so which we have the Chef, Puppet, and Ansible. There are the three main tools, and the Ansible is in this the current market. This is the very well known, and the most of the client they are preferring about Ansible if they are expecting the Docker or the Kubernetes infrastructure with the cloud. Yeah, but what is that the architecture? If you try to understand, so architecture, I'll come back. Yeah, so is it audible now? Is it audible now? Yeah. The architecture point of view, the first we discuss about that agent-based architectures. Agent-based architecture, which we are going to apply for the chef and puppet. That means this architecture, whatever we have this before us, like this architecture is for chef and puppet. We try to understand chef and puppet how these are working in the infrastructure. Then we'll come back to the Ansible. What is the architecture that we have? As simple as it is, agent-based architecture, which offer the chef and puppet. Agent-less based architecture, which offer Ansible. But what is the difference between the agent-based and agent-less based, and which one is having the very flexible? We try to understand. Suppose if the agent-based architecture, if you just understand it, yeah. So any the automation scripts you are implementing is nothing but, so we'll upload that to the version controlling tool, and this central server. That means suppose if I'm having my 20 systems, all these 20 systems to apply the change. So there's a change of the file will manage this in one of the central system. And from that central system, we'll distribute these files to this all the 20 systems or the 100 systems or 1000 systems which we have in the infrastructure. So first we'll pull the code to the central system. If you have any change in the version controlling tool, and the change, the central server, what it will do this is in the agent based architectures, it doesn't push the change to that all the clients. It doesn't push it, but what does it, what is the activity we have is on the client machine. That means there are the target nodes like 20 systems, or where the change is required to apply it. All those target systems will call this as agents or the clients. There are target nodes also, will call that. That means we have one change. That change, the first which will be pulled to that one central system, and from the central system we can push it. But it doesn't push it in the agent base. It doesn't push it. It just keeps us in the central server itself. But what the agents will do this is, agents are nothing but the target nodes, like all the 20 systems where that required to apply the change. These systems, what do they do is, so they're all having the some time interval, like every half an hour. The default, if you try to understand, every half an hour. Yeah, again you are not able to hear, but net seems it's good, but I'm not sure. Is it okay now? Is it audible now? Hello, is it audible now?
This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, so in the agent-based architecture, what we are trying to understand is like once the change is identified in the version controlling tool, the change will be pulled to the about our central server. And once the change is available in the central server, what the agents will do is, so agent keep on communicating with the central server, any change is available or not, any change is available or not, on the basis of some intervals. And whenever the change is, latest change is available, then these agents are going to pull that change. That means pulling the change to the agent machine. On the agent machine, that will be run as a locally. So in that agent based architectures, what is that approach that we have is, this is the pull based approach. Why we are saying that the pull based approach is, each and every agent, that means like what is the concept we have is, on the central system some packages will be installed, and on each and every agent also we will install some packages, and some services are running. These services on the client machine, what does it do this is, it is keep on trying to communicate with the central server, and it is going to verifying this any latest changes are available or not. And if any change is available, then it tries to pull it that change to the local system, and it will run locally itself. Yeah, so this is a agent based architecture is, on central machine we are running the some process, and as well as on each and every agent, suppose if you have the 20 systems, on all the 20 systems some processes are running, these processes are communicating with the central server to pull the changes and to run the changes on the local system. So the chef and puppet, so what are the configuration that we have is, suppose if we take the puppet, so we need to install some the packages, like the master packages on the central server. There are the master server, and what are the machines you are going to take it to configure with the central server. On all the machines also we need to install some agent packages. So master packages are separate and agent packages are separate. And after the packages have been installed, then we need to start some services like agent service on the agent machines. And this agent service, what it is going to try to do this is, we need to register this agent service with the central server. And once it is registered, it is going to keep on verifying about the changes on the central server. Any change is available, it is gets the changes and it runs in the local system. So a lot of process. And suppose on this agent system, some process, the agent process down, then we cannot get that the changes on the agent machine. Yeah, these are all the dependencies we have. But agentless architecture, if we just observe that, how do the agentless is, suppose if you have the any change, and one more point, I mean before that the change, if you try to understand, here also we take it one central system where we are managing this all the changes which are required to apply to all the target nodes. And the point what we have this is, here we can logically group the target nodes in the sense, like if I may have the database servers, two servers, I can define all the database servers as a one group, and all the application servers, suppose application server systems, we have the four systems, all application servers I can group it as a one logical group. Suppose we have some Apache servers as some three servers, all those three servers as a separate. So logically grouping about it, the servers on the base of the functionalities which we have, that is database server separately, app server separately, web server separately, load balancer server separately, monitoring server separately. But what is the type of communication we are expecting from the Ansible master machine to all these target nodes is, that is simple SSH communication. If you have that SSH communication to all the servers, yes, we can push the changes to all the target nodes. So once the change is available in our central repository, that means like about our code repository, we can get the code to this Ansible central machine. And from the Ansible central machine, we can apply the change. This change is to the web servers. We can push the change to only web servers. I don't need to look at about it all the servers. And if I'm having the change, like I need to some package, I need to update it, which belong to database. So that package updating, I can do the only on the database servers, because we can do the logically grouping all the destination systems on the basis of about our requirement. But how do you define it? We'll come back to this. We try to understand it. And what are the type of communication channel it is using is SSH. So it means what all the systems we have, the make sure about it, they're all having that SSH communication. And what is that approach that we have is push approach. The push approach is like Ansible, if it is having that any change is received, the change, it is going to push to that target nodes. That would be web servers or the app servers or database servers or all the servers. Suppose if I'm going to install some wget package, wget package is applicable for the web servers or app servers or database, all the systems. But if I'm applying some Apache change is only to my web servers. We can logically divide about our task. This task is required to apply this to which target node. Only on that target node we can push the changes. It is not required to have the communication with all the systems always. But in the agent-based architecture, yes, if you have this all the systems are going to communicate with us every half an hour with the central system, and it is going to identify this any catalog is available for that machine purpose or not. If the catalog it is available, then it is going to pull that change and running that change in the local system. Yeah, so this is the main advantage is like the 2 points we have. This is one is agent based architecture or having that pull approach, and Ansible is having that push approach. Yeah, is it everyone having the same point, same problem? Yeah, so if you try to understand it, what is the difference that we have? Jafar Puppet, if you take it, these are all agent-based architecture. And pull approach. The means pull approach is each and every agent is going to try to communicate with this master machine and pulling the changes and running the changes on the local system. And the type of communication is the master and the agent the via SSL communication. It uses that SSL communication, and we need to configure SSL certificates between the master and the agents. But whereas Ansible, if you just observe that agentless architecture, push approach, that means once the central system contains any change, that change will be pushed to that all the target nodes. And what is that? The third approach which I have this is SH communication. So it uses especially the SSH communication to apply that all the changes. And one more point, what do we have this is like add component features. That's anyway, I'll come back to that. And orchestration. What is this orchestration is the target groups. That means target nodes, whatever we would like to apply the change, all these target groups, we can logically group it. We can logically group it. Yeah, the target groups we can logically manage that as single unit. As okay, let me write. So all the target groups, we can logically manage this as a single unit. That means if I'm handling the web servers, all my web servers into one group, all the app servers into another group, all the database servers into another group. So this one we call this is orchestration, but this feature is not available in the Puppet. Yeah, so there are some advantages we have. This is Ansible Agentless architecture. You don't need to configure any packages on the agent machines. Only on the central machine you are going to install some Ansible packages. Even service is also not required to run on the master machine. We are not going to run any service for the Ansible, either on the master machine or agent machine. But the Puppet, if you are using, yes, we need to start the master services, and we need to make sure in all the systems the agent services also, the master and agent communications, that is agent based architecture. And they're all going to use it SSL and different approaches are using, but here just to have that SH communication. Yes, any system you are defining is nothing but SH communication will enable that, otherwise we cannot connect it. If you have that SH communication, then we can apply the change on the system using Ansible. Yeah, there are some differences which we have, that the Puppet and Ansible whenever we compare it. So all these features, whenever you observe that Ansible is that the recommended, and mostly they are preferring about it, cloud infrastructures, and as well as especially the container based architectures, they are preferring about it Ansible. On the previous on-premises systems, they were using about it the Chef or the Puppet, but the next is everything like which we are coming to that, that is a container-based architectures and with the cloud infrastructures. Yeah, so that is the main point. We can understand that's the architecture point of view. And Ansible is an orchestration engine. What is this orchestration engine? We are saying is database servers as one group, web servers as one group. If I have this one change which belong to my web servers, I can apply that change only to my web servers. But how do we logically divide it? That is about even the first activity. We'll come back to that. So that is inventory mechanism, we'll call that. We'll come back to that. That's how do we orchestrate about your all the systems. So like load balancers as one group, web servers as a group, app servers as another group, database servers as another group. And from one system, we can control it or we can manage it. All these 100 systems or the 200 systems or the 1000 systems, doesn't matter of it. One time is the activity which you are going to define it, which are all the systems are belong to database servers, which are all the servers are belong to the web servers, or which are all the systems are having the load balancers, or which are all the systems are having monitoring. One time you need to identify all the systems, you need to logically group it in one file, and that file give that as an input to the Ansible. Ansible is going to take care of it, applying about which change on which systems or which target nodes, that is going to take care of it. Yeah, so we'll work with that. Anyway, we'll see this with the demonstration, all these points. Yeah, that's about the points we're trying to understand. The main point what you have is how fastly you are applying the particular change to the end user. That means to the production environment is very, very, very important in the delivery process. Whether it is one line of the code or whether it is 100 lines of the code, or the particular the functionality you are releasing or particular change you are going to update, it is yes, delivering that the process with the quality and so without having this any issues or the quality of the product, how fastly you deliver is important. To have thus automated infrastructures, we are expecting that. But what we need to automate it? Yes, all the things whatever you are expecting for that application point of view. Suppose you are supporting for so-and-so application, that application, what all the activities, that is operating system point of view, or the database point of view, or the report servers point of view, or the monitoring servers point of view, or the load balancers point of view, everything we should able to automate it. There's applications and application dependencies, data. But how do you do that automation? Yes, we are having that these configuration management tools. Now, suppose whenever we are learning the Linux command, how do we create a user? We are learning about some commands, user add. But if I just refer about the Ansible, to create a user, they have given this one command. I need to use it, that command with the Ansible. Then the Ansible is going to take care of that, creating the user in all the target nodes. Or you need to install some package, Apache package, on 10 systems, all the web servers. Okay, the package to install it, they have given us one command or one module. That module is just to define that the properties, and it is going, if you run it, that is going to, Ansible is going to take care of that, installing that package on all the systems. Yeah, so there's a beauty. Anyway, we'll come back. We have those, I mean, almost 6 or 7 classes. This is not ending the today on this Ansible itself. Yeah, so that's the point. So which we have Ansible. Ansible is agentless architecture, and which is having that SSH based communication to the target node, and there is no process is required to up and, I mean, to which is up and running on the master machine or agent machines, and even you don't need to install any packages on all the agents to communicate with the master machine, just as such communication. And one of the best feature what we have is orchestration. That means logically identify about your the target groups, target nodes, and those nodes you can logically group it in one file. That's file, just define it in the Ansible, and Ansible is going to take care of the remaining story. Yeah, there are the points. But how do we set up this Ansible? How do we install it, and how do we configure this Ansible? Yeah, so how, I mean, do you have those any queries on this so far? So let me. Yeah, so now we try to look at about the some more points, like how do we install it, and how do we set up these Ansible master machines on Ansible client is okay, we don't have the big deal, but how do we manage it? So we take it the two systems, the one is a master and second one is the agent, and we do that the master and agent configurations and applying that are defining the targets. And later we are going to talk at some with the AWS, and AWS time, so we are going to use it same Ansible with multiple targets for the mounting servers, database servers, and app servers will come back. Yeah, so how do you do that? The installation about this Ansible is, and this is first we are trying to understand on the master machine. Just install this package, that is Apple release, the first one, then update about your caches, that is M install, Apple release, that is enterprise Linux, so that means enterprise release, and update the cache. Then once that is update done, then make sure these packages are installed. One of the packages that is required is Git. Git is about our purpose, like we are going to pull the code from the repository. So to pull the code or to push the code, we are going to use the Git our purpose. This is not the dependency for Ansible, but main modules what is required is Python modules. That means Ansible internally using about the Python. So make sure about Python, Python developer module, Python PIP module, and OpenSSL. OpenSSL is for SSH communication purpose. And finally, what is the package that we have to install the Ansible is Ansible package name. Yeah, there are the packages, the Python packages, OpenSSL package, and Ansible packages. That's all. We don't need to start the Ansible service. And then you can check it Ansible is installed or not with the Ansible version. We'll come back to verify that. But all these playbooks, that means what are the automation scripts which you are implementing, that all these playbooks are automation scripts to apply that, we use it separate user accounts. We don't go for that using the root user accounts. That is not at all recommended. We create or we use it separate user account from the master machine, and as well as even on the target nodes also. So there's a user account, we take it one user account, that is Ansible user, like user add Ansible, and then we set up the passwords for this Ansible user account. And with this user account, if you would like to use it about our package installations or services starting stopping, we need to have that sudo airs permission. Suppose the root user permissions, if you would like to get it, if you don't have the root user privileges, we cannot install the packages. So if you'd like to install the package, we need to have the root user privileges. So this user, we will add to that sudo airs file. That is the vi sudo is that the editor which we can use it, the sudo s file which is going to start it, we will add this line. That means to this Ansible user account, we are going to set that on all the host with all the permissions. And a no password, yes. So the no password is not required as all the commands to run it. So this is the line for this Ansible user account required to add in sudo s file. Then this Ansible user account, we can use it as a sudo user. He will be having that all the root user privileges. Yeah, so that's the point, like a user creation and password setting and adding that user to the sudo s file as well as. Once that is done, but what we are expecting is what are the master and agents, whatever we have defined, but we are expecting SSH based authentication, SSH based communication. But whenever you are applying that or running this automation scripts on the target node is nothing but passwordless communications required. Suppose if it is asking that each and every time the password, then that is a manual effort. So as we know already, that is how do you configure that the passwordless logins to this remote system. That means key generation. The passwordless login point of view, we will log in with the Ansible user account and we'll generate that the key generation, that is SSH key generation. Then we will copy this user, the public key, to the target machines. That means we are trying to establish the passwordless communication to all the target nodes. So SSH copy ID and user account and the target system. And once that is done, so we can make sure it SSH without having the password to the target node or nodes. Yeah, this is the third activity. The first activity is so install the packages. Then second activity is create separate user account and add that user account to the sudo s file. And that user account related SSH keys generated and copy or share this public key to that all the target nodes. Yeah, so these are all the main the concepts, the configuration that we have. So which we do that by taking about this the one vagrant machine, one machine as a Ansible master machine, that is central machine we'll call that, and another machine will take it as a target node, and that target node and to this Ansible will try to establish the passwordless communications. Yeah, so let me start about that. Let me take it one vagrant file first. Start about it, two virtual machines. Yesterday we were understanding one example script. Yeah, multi-virtual machine. Let me take it this vagrant file. And here I'm just creating one directory in the workspace, that is Ansible. And we are going to launch this two virtual machines from this vagrant file. Yeah, so one is which is going to have the some IP address like 5665. Second one is 66. And the first one, the Ansible 01. And let me define this host name as the Ansible, the master. And we are using CentOS 7.2. And let me use it the second node as Ansible node. This is as an agent we are going to use it that. We can set up a number. We'll come back how do you do that. We'll take it to two machines to set up this as a target nodes. Yeah, these are all the configuration. Now let me launch these two virtual machines. Yeah, so what are the things that we need to perform is, so let me define the steps. Yes, on this control server, let's install this Apple release package, then update it, then install the other Python packages with the OpenSL and Ansible. So these are all required to run only on the master machine or controller server. Then we'll add it about this Ansible user and we'll set the password. Then we'll add this line to the vi sudo. And this step, we will repeat it, the same step repeat on remaining system also. This means on the target node also, we are going to use it Ansible user account to run the playbooks. Yeah, so for that purpose, on the master machine and as well as on the target nodes, we are going to set up this user account. And then on the central system, so there's sh key generation and sh copy id. This is required only run on the master machine, and this is required on these two machines. Ansible user account, we are going to use it on the master machine and as well as the target node. Yeah, let's do these activities. Yeah, so it has been started. And first let me log into Ansible 01. First master node we are logging. Yeah, this is Ansible master machine. The first login as a root user account to install all these packages. So there is m, and before that we know, I mean, we were doing that SSH configuration. If you try to recollect of it, these two systems as new systems we have taken, and we need to enable that the passwordless logins and the public key type of logins, the root login required or not. Those properties we need to enable in SSH configuration level. This is not specific to the Ansible, so this is the configuration which is required on the host to enable the SSH. Let me do the first that step, then we'll come back installing these packages and going ahead. So let me edit this file, etc sh. Already we were doing all these configuration the before. Yeah, the permit root login and public key authentication and password authentication. Yes, password authentication anyway it is available as yes. Let me restart this SSH service. Yeah, so this is required on the node machine also. Let me set up this SSH, otherwise we cannot communicate it, SSH communications. Yeah, so before configuring this, let me start about, because update it is going to some time. So let me install the packages. Is what are the packages that's required? The first thing, let me install Apple release. Yeah, so that's done. And let me update it, update. But it takes us some time. So update, so which is going to try to update all the packages which are installed on the system, which takes some time. So meanwhile, let me go back to the node. And first let me enable that SH communication. Yeah, so these three properties. And yeah, so that's the point. And anyway, update which takes some more time. Yeah, so which is going on. Meanwhile, on the second system, let me do one more thing also, that is Ansible user creation and adding that user to the sudoers file, because we are going to use that user to apply the changes. Yeah, so user add Ansible, and let's set the password for this Ansible user account. Yeah, the password has been set up that, and let me add that to the vi sudo file. And here, if you just observe this in the sudo file, already root user account is added here. Sorry, already root user account has been added in the sudo file. Now let's add that about our Ansible user account also, and all permissions to all the nodes, and no password with all the commands. So this is the notation which is required for this user account. As a sudo user, we are setting about it, this user account. And let's save the changes. Yeah, so that is required on the node agent. What are the things we have done on the node agent is, because we have taken as a fresh system, first we were enabling that the password based logins or the public key based authentication, and the root to login also required. Then the root login, we are accepting that is SH level configuration, and we are restarting the service. And the second thing what we have done on the agent machine is Ansible user account we have added, we have set the password, and we have added that user to the sudoers file. Yeah, now we are on the master machine, but it is updating all the packages, so we need to wait until to this. And once that is done, and then we go for installing those packages, that is git packages, because git why we are installing is we are going to try to pull some playbooks or some roles from the repository. So git, Python, and Ansible, those packages will install. Then we will add that user account, that is Ansible user, and we'll add that user to the sudoers file. But it takes some time. So meanwhile, so let's continue the some other, some more concepts. Yeah, so once Ansible is installed and everything has been set up, that one of the important configuration file what do we have from the Ansible is that is in etc folder, in the Ansible folder we have ansible.cfg. So this is the main configuration file of the Ansible, and we don't have any service to start it or stop it, either on the master machine or the agent machine. Just Python modules are required, that's all. Even on the agents also Python modules are required. Anyway, Python modules will be installed, or those are coming this with the default system. That's why you don't need to install this any package on the client machine also. Yeah, but what is the main configuration file that we have on master machine is that is ansible.cfg, which is located in etc ansible. And this file we need to define it, which user account we are using that. Yeah, so this is a if you just observe here, this is a primary Ansible configuration file. And agentless, yes, we don't have any agent. Daemonless, we are not running that any service. Daemonless configuration. And whenever you are running that any Ansible command, by default, each and every command it is going to read this configuration file. It read on each Ansible command whatever we are running that. Yeah, that is the beauty from the Ansible. And yes, what are the main configuration that we need to do is once the Ansible has been installed, we need to uncomment two properties: which user account we are using. What is the custom user account we are using is Ansible user account or some XYZ user account. So which user you are using as a sudo user to run all the commands of the Ansible, that user we need to specify. That's one property. And another property what do we have is inventory property. Inventory is like, as we were trying to understand this, all the web servers or the app servers or the database servers or the load balance servers, all the systems information logically we can group it and we can define all the systems information in one file. That file where you are defining all the target nodes information of the Ansible, what do you call is inventory. So where that inventory file is located, that's we need to define it. So there are the two properties, but any customization you are doing on this configuration file is no restarts are required. So just edit this file and define that like a sudo user which user account and inventory file location. But what is the default inventory file location and where that is available is the default inventory file location. If you just observe, that's the path. Yeah, so anyway, there's I'll come back explaining this inventory format and everything. That is also in etc Ansible, in that directory host results one file is available. So once Ansible is installed, in that etc Ansible folder itself we have this one more file, that is host, hosts, host file. And that file is the inventory file. That means any target node you would like to use it, that node information you need to define in that inventory file. We'll come back. So in this Ansible configuration file, we need to define which user account you are using to run the playbooks. And the playbooks are going to read the target information where those targets are. I mean, the target server's information is located in which file, that we call this as inventory location. Yeah, there are the two configurations that we need to do. Yes, it is updated. Yeah, so update is done. Now let me install those packages which are required. Install all these packages with the Git, Python, OpenSL, Ansible. We are doing all the things on the master. Oh, so yeah, so those packages have been installed. Now we can verify that Ansible hyphen version. Yes, Ansible, what is the version that is installed is 2.7.6, and this is the main configuration file of that Ansible. Etc Ansible ansible.cfg, and so which has been set up the some modules on a module location, the Python modules, and Ansible. All these commands are executing. That means the binary file of that Ansible is located in the bin Ansible, and this Ansible is having the dependence on the Python. But what is the Python version that is using is 2.7.5. Yeah, so that's about Ansible, and we don't need to start that any services also. And the next point what do you have is one more thing is, let me add that Ansible user account. Yes, so user add, already we have done on the target node. Same thing we are repeating here also. Yeah, so that's the user account has been added. Now let me add this user to the sudo file. Yeah, this is a line. Yeah, so that's about the sudo user permission. And then now what do we do this is we go for sh configuration. Now this is a master machine, and we are going to use it this node as a slave or agent target node. But we need to have that sh communication between these two systems. But that sh communication also passwordless login. So the SSH, let me verify that the first with password based. Then we go for key generation and copying that. And which user account we are going to use it is. And first, let me change this to. Now we are running this all the commands on the root, but let me switch to Ansible user account. Yes, SSH. But what is the user account on the target node? So that is also Ansible. And what is the IP address of the system? So we have. Okay, let me get this the host name. Yeah, so this is IP address. We are just trying to connect it from the master node to this target node. So this is the communication is required between the master and the target node. Yes. Now, yes, the password based. Sorry, yeah, this Ansible user account, right? Welcome is the password I have defined. Yes, now we are able to connect it. Now we are in the Ansible node. So through that SH, we are able to connect it, but the passwordless communications we are expecting. Let me exit this node. On this master machine, for this Ansible user account, let me generate a key, that is sh keygen. Yeah, the default home directory, we are going to generate these keys and no passphrase. Yes, the user home directory dot sh. Yes, it is generated the private key and public key. Now we need to copy the public key to the target node. So let me use it same sh command. But what is the command we need to use? It is copy ID. Already we know all the things we have done for Jenkins purpose, and whenever we discuss the Linux also we had these points. Yes, one key has been copied. Now let me verify sh communication. Yes, now we are able to connect to the node without the password. Yeah, so this is one node we are going to define. And second node what I'm having is, so Ansible controller, already I'm having it. This controller itself, can I use it as a target node? Yes, we can use it. I mean, Jenkins master itself, we are using to run the jobs as a slave machine. Like that, instead of launching the one more node, for those the two nodes as a target nodes to define it, already we have this Ansible master as one node, and this node we are going to configure as a target node. That means total two nodes we are going to use it as a target nodes. One is 65 and second one is 66. But 65 itself we are using as the master machine and as well as target node. Or you can take this one more virtual machine and you can launch this one more also as a target node, like if you would like to, or if you need it two or more. But what I'm doing is Ansible master, whatever we are using as control server, that system itself as a target node we are going to configure it. That means whenever I try to connect it to this IP address with SH, I need to have the password less communication even on this IP address also. So for that purpose, let me copy that the public key on this host also. So that means what we do this is we try to check it. Now if I try to connect it to my 65 system with this sh communication, and it is prompting the password, but which system we are connecting is Ansible same system itself. The same system itself we are trying to connect it, but whenever I am trying to connect it, it is prompting for the password, but I don't want to use the password. So what do we do? This is for this also we try to copy the public key. Let me do that sh copy id on this 65 system also. Sh copy id on this with this Ansible user account on this host also. That means the Ansible controller server itself we are going to use it as a target node. Yes, there's a key copied. Now if I try to run it sh with this 65 system, now I'm able to log into my Ansible master. Yeah, so total two systems we are going to use it as a controller server, and one is the 65 system and second one is 66 system. But 65 system which we have, that the same we are going to use it control server also. That means the local system itself is a target system, but that local system also, if you like to apply that sh, and there's the password, I mean the public key authentication we are configured. This is the public key we have just copied on this host for this user account. Yeah, there are the two target nodes. We use it as an inventory, that is a target node. But how do we define it? This is a target node, that is inventory file. We need to discuss it, but that inventory file we talk it tomorrow. And before that, as we were trying to understand that the one of the important configuration file of the Ansible, that is let me exit here. Yeah, now we are in the master machine, and what is the main configuration file of the Ansible? etc Ansible and Ansible.cfg. Let me open this file. And what are the main configuration that we need to enable it? There are, I mean, the remaining all are default, so that is on the basis of the requirement. And one of the property what we need to enable is inventory file So where did the inventory file is located? etc Ansible host. But how do we define this host or inventory file is? We'll come back tomorrow. So there is a next tomorrow we start about that. Inventories, how do we define for about our Ansible to apply the changes on the target nodes. The change, that could be any change. We'll see this. We are going to have this lot of activities will come back. But what is the user account we are using to apply all these changes is, that is also we need to define. So one more property which is commented. So just to remove that, the pseudo user, but the which user account we are using as a pseudo user is, that is Ansible. Yeah, there are the two configuration that is required. Remaining modules are the which we have like the remaining properties are the default one where we don't have the big activities on that. But there are the two things. Let's customize it as per this requirement and save this. Even you don't need to restart any service also. So that's the beauty. But if it is the Puppet, yes, we have the master process and agent process and any configuration. If you do that, restarting those services, a lot of things, that's we have the management is not an easy thing, administration. But Ansible is very lightweight component and it's simple with SH, you can apply the change. Yeah, that's the points which I have for today. There's on this Ansible. What we are trying to understand is first, delivery in the continuous delivery process point of view. How fastly you are delivering the change to the production environment is very, very, very important. For the production environment to manage it, that application is having the load balancers, monitoring servers, app servers, or the web servers, or the database servers, all those the resources or the infrastructure resources which are required for that application, we should be able to automate it. Then only we can say that's about our infrastructure is, or the change which you are expecting can be delivered as quickly as possible. But to perform that, like the configuration management tools are helping that, the Puppet or the Chef or the Ansible is, so which is having that the agentless and SH based communication and orchestration mechanisms and easy applying that, and just to have that SH communication to the target nodes. We don't need to have that any process on the master machines or the agent machines, so you can apply this configuration changes with easily. But how do you do that? All these things, that's where I have started. So that means setting up the Ansible point of view. An Ansible installation point of view, the main thing what you have is make sure that appel release, that's a package, we have the dependency, install it, and then get that the Ansible and the supported packages, that's the Python and OpenSSL. And then you can use the root user account also, or you can specify the separate user account, that creating that user. But user, make sure that the sudo is permission, because you are going to manage that all the packages, services, everything. We need to have the root privileges. That is like adding about that user account. And what are the target nodes we are going to configure this? All the target nodes, make sure that SH communication. That is a key generation, and copying this key to that. What are the target nodes we have? All the target nodes we need to just one time, you need to copy that. And on the target node, so there's a use that the Ansible is the user account. That user account add to that via sudo. These are all one-time configuration. Yeah, so that's the points which we discussed today. And configuration file, so ansible.cfg, like edit that the inventory file locations, and as well as which user account you are going to use it to apply the configuration changes. That's we have done. And tomorrow we start about that inventory files, how to define it, and how do we apply that the change to the target nodes. Yeah, so that's for today. Any queries or the questions?